Come with me today on British Airways flight BA15, where I'm going to be reviewing the new Club Suite product. This is British Airways' premier product in Club World. I'm going to see whether this is significantly better than the original Club World product, and also how it compares to its competitors. If you like the video, I'd be extremely grateful if you would subscribe. It really helps the channel. BA15 flies from London Heathrow Airport, Terminal 5, to Singapore's Changi Airport, Terminal 1, with a total flight time of 14.5 hours and covering a distance of nearly 11,000 kilometers or 7,000 miles. I started my journey today by popping into the British Airways lounge at Heathrow Airport. I chose the Galleries North lounge as it was closer to my gate. I'll post a full review of this lounge in a separate video, but for the purposes of this video, it was a nice lounge. Definitely not the best I've been in, but I really enjoyed being on this terrace and looking out onto the airport. Upon boarding, a welcome drink was offered. We had a choice of orange juice or champagne. I chose orange juice as I didn't want to drink too much that flight. Already provided at the seat were a water bottle and amenity kit containing certain things such as toothpaste and a lip balm. After about half an hour on the plane, we eventually began our pushback. As we made our way to the runway, the safety video began playing. I'll be quiet so you can have a listen. As you can see, it's quite quirky and very British.
I must confess, a sentiment of the most tender nature. Welcome, everyone. We will now demonstrate the safety features of this aircraft, and your attention is essential, as this may be different from any aircraft that you've flown before. Do I smell the winds of war? I see smoke on the horizon.
Smoking, including e-cigarettes, vaping, and the use of other smoking devices, is not permitted at any time whilst on board, including the toilets, which have smoke detectors in them.
Told it's you. For too long I've kept my true feelings hidden, but now
Personal devices should have the flight safe mode.
Whilst we were taxiing, I took the opportunity to take a little look at my seat. As you can see on the left, there is an electronic seat control, although they did retain physical buttons if you're more comfortable. There's a nice tray that folds down for you to eat your food on. If you're wondering why it suddenly got sunny, it's because I took this later in the flight. I'm just putting this clip here for ease of viewing. There is also a hidden storage compartment that had the TV remote, as well as a power socket and 2 USB-A charging points. This proved more than adequate to charge all of my devices, although, as always, I would have liked to have seen USB-C, as most devices seem to be moving to this. As you can see here, these seats are reasonably new, and the finish is both modern and high quality. I was very impressed to see the standard of this seat, particularly compared to my recent flight on the old Club World. Before we had made our way to the runway, the captain got on the PA to announce that the plane would need to be de-iced. Unfortunately, we were flying out of London at the beginning of January, and it was literally freezing outside, so this was fine. A number of trucks came by and quickly sprayed de-icing fluid on the wings of the plane. Overall, this only took about 5 minutes, so it didn't delay our departure too much. And frankly, I'd rather be safe than sorry when it comes to a flight. Finally, about 20 minutes after we'd initially pushed back from the gate, we made our way to the runway and began our ascent. Once we were airborne, I settled in properly to my seat. One very important thing you'll note about this seat is that the configuration is 1-2-1. This is in contrast to the typical Club World, which is 2-4-2. In other words, there are half as many seats on this flight as a typical Club World row, and that gives you a corresponding amount of additional space. I would say though, we shouldn't be giving British Airways too much credit for this. All they've done is brought their product in line with, frankly, most other business class products out there. Which is not to say it's not a good thing, but also, they didn't exactly break the mold here. In order to counteract the jet lag, I fell asleep pretty much straight away after I got on board. I didn't even have dinner. So after sleeping for about 8 hours, I woke up and requested a very important cup of coffee. Well, I say this, I actually requested several. Apologies in advance for how dark this clip is. It was very dark on the plane and I didn't want to open my window blind so as to wake up other passengers. This is a spare cheese board off the dinner menu that one of the air hostesses was able to find for me. 2 hours later, however, I was able to fully open my blinds and requested breakfast. We started with cut fruits, as well as a Danish and a yogurt, and of course, another cup of coffee. This was good, although the fruits were a little bit dry. Next up was a full English breakfast. This was actually really tasty, and a lot better than the equivalent one I had on my previous British Airways Club World flight. The bacon was cooked excellently, the eggs weren't dry, and the sausage was really flavourful. Honestly, I have no complaints about this breakfast. My empty plate here should show you how happy I was with it. I didn't eat the mushroom because I don't like mushrooms, and the same for tomato. Sorry. We were due to begin landing shortly, and so I popped into the toilets to change out of my pyjamas and back into my clothing. The toilets, there's no kind way to say this, they're not very exciting, and it seems not much effort has gone into the overall finish. Although thankfully, they do at least provide various moisturisers and face creams. Although again, much could be done about the presentation. When we had about 50 minutes left to go, the captain came on the PA to announce that we were landing shortly and to instruct the crew to do their pre-landing procedures. For some reason this day, it was very cloudy, and when I looked out of a window, I could really only see the engine. Thankfully, there was no turbulence though, so I can't complain. With about 20 minutes left to go, at about this point, the aeroplane went into a circling pattern and held there for a good 10 to 15 minutes. This meant that we were slightly later than expected landing. Finally, after looping around for what must have been about 7 times, the plane began to bank left and make its way to descend into Changi Airport. I was very happy at this point, because despite having slept for a decent chunk of it, the flight is still over 14 hours. As we got closer to the ground, we broke through the clouds, and I began to see the ocean and the ships below, sailing into Singapore's ports. I'll be quiet for this bit, so that you can watch the landing. In typical efficiency for Changi Airport, from wheels down to being in a taxi was only about 40 minutes, and that includes waiting for our bags. I was grateful to finally see the skyline of Singapore before me. Overall, I was quite impressed with this flight, and particularly the Club World seat, which I think is a significant improvement over the original seat in a 2-4-2 configuration. That said, and as I stressed earlier, this is not a market-leading product, All British Airways have done with their new Club Suite is bring it up to standard of some of the competitors. And being realistic, I still think it falls short compared to the likes of Qatar Airways or Singapore Airlines. I would fly this again, but it would not be my first choice.